Okay, remember that they're changing my voice. This video is about the root causes of black urban violence. This video is directed at Nick Fuentes, Lilly Gaddis, Stephen Miller, Breitbart, and everyone else like them. I'm a researcher. I'm the son of two doctors, one a brain surgeon. I have a college degree in information technology with a concentration in software engineering, though I haven't been doing that for a long time. What I have been doing is researching things related to the economy, things related to gangs and sociology. I've been doing a lot of research, and part of that research is into cults and how they affect society, the criminal underworld, if you will, and the true nature of it. This video is about the factual evidence, again, the factual evidence in regards to corporate groups, social clubs, and cults, etc., and how they influence black gangs, black thugs, black people who have been convicted of crimes, how they've influenced these people, how they're still influencing these people. Already you should know that I'm right. This goes far beyond Epstein. I've hung out with these people when I was younger. I've hung out with people in the mafia when I was younger. Believe it or not, I'm not in the mafia. I've hung out with people who are businessmen and academics to my father's network. And I know quite a bit about these things firsthand. I'm from California. I'm not from, some small town in Alaska or something, or Oklahoma. I'm from California, not far from San Francisco, where the Grand Lodge of Freemasonry is. The main one for this state, I'd say, is in San Francisco, a very influential place, not far from Oakland. I was born in San Jose, which is actually more populated than San Francisco or Oakland. So I've done I've done a lot of research, and I've been making videos for 16 years. 16 years. In fact, at the end of this month, it'll be 16 years to the day exactly. And I can assure you that I'm right. And if you disagree, please put in the comments, and please treat me with the respect that I deserve. Okay, so believe it or not, I'm being harassed by police officers and their allies. And someone looking like a white supremacist just drove by right now, and I'm not scared in the slightest. But I must start off by pointing out that I have 23 witnesses on record to the psychological operation against me, and PSYOPs are a part of the discussion. So number one, the rich massacre people around the world with their policies and proxies, and with their massive networks of groups, which includes cults. And they have caused black people to commit street violence in a disproportionate manner. Okay, so we see here in the first point, we see the facts, and we see a claim that we are going to back up. However, most of you, by the time you get to this point, you have no doubt in your mind that I'm right. Point number two. Everyone knows that Hollywood is full of cults and occultists that influence people. Okay? People learn from their environment. There's something called learned behaviors that have everything to do with people who are influencing you and certain psychological moments that occur. Point number three. When we're talking about the genre of rock and roll, okay, keep in mind that satanic cults are a huge part of it. And even the term rock and roll refers to the process of channeling the devil. And people are said to rock and roll when they start receiving the spirit of the devil. We're talking about Nick Fuentes and Lilly and Breitbart and Stephen Miller and other famous racial supremacists. We're basically talking about Satanists, whether they see it that way or not. They resemble the Satanists I've been researching. They resemble the serial killers to some degree, like Ted Bundy. They resemble rock and roll people with satanic tattoos and throwing up satanic hand signs, etc. They resemble people who were in the cult of Set, who is Horus's main rival, one way to look at it. Certainly APEP, when we're talking about ancient Egyptian cults and mythology. When we're talking about the historicity of the cult of Set, aka Sutek, aka Sudi, whose Greek counterpart is Zeus. We're talking about people walking around Egypt who, when someone from the cult of Horus would see them, he would say, hey, that guy looks like a Setian, right? That guy looks like he follows Set, and if they're at war, he might strike that person down. Now, how would he know, right? Because of how they look, their way about them, their aura, their essence, their spirit, the atmosphere, their way of thinking, their state of being. And so it is with Nick Fuentes and Lilly Gaddis and Breitbart and Stephen Miller and other famous racial supremacists. Now, if you believe that they shouldn't be called a racial supremacist, please put in the comments. But according to my research, they very much fit the description and they very much fit the mold. Point number 4. The main researchers and experts in CIA psychological operations, the main ones that I've come across, they all agree that the CIA still runs domestic psychological operations. And think about that. They all are saying, yes, these operations took place, right? And there's an abundance of evidence when it comes to, MK Naomi, MK Ultra, Project Artichoke, Operation Midnight Climax, what have you. An abundance of evidence. But these people all agree that they're still running psychological operations. You think that has nothing to do with urban crime? Point number 5. Prison gangs are basically cults with connections to the rich. And we'll prove this over time. Okay, but write that point down if you don't agree with it. Prison gangs are basically cults, violent cults, very pronounced and prolific cults with connections to the rich. Point number 6, biker gangs are basically cults. Right? The Vagos were said to worship Loki, and they're still around, right? And they still do. And Loki is basically a satanic cult deity, right? A deity of Norse mythology, a deity of mischief. Point number 7, Mexican drug cartels are all basically cult groups, or you could say they're at least mostly cult groups. And they have members that are here. And with the government, they basically bring in the drugs. The government is slacking their work, if for nothing else, right? They sort of have a certain criminal negligence when it comes to addressing cartel activity. And sometimes, the right wing might point the finger at the left wing, saying California, and say, hey, you're not doing enough. Okay? And that also affects black urban crime. And when we're talking about cartels, we're talking about people who have a historical relationship with various nations, right? China, America, you name it. Venezuela, Colombia, Mexico. The government of these nations have a certain relationship with these cartels. And these governments are quite often proxies for, globalists who are basically mostly white Jew and LGBT people. Okay, pretty straightforward. And they're bringing in drugs to Chicago and causing a huge drug war. 500, 600 people die every year. To say that it's just black genetics is insane. It's not just wrong, it is evil and insane. Not to mention, when we look at the crime rates in the Warsaw Ghetto during World War II, right, in Poland, why were these Jews committing crimes at such high rates? When we look at Australia and white biker gangs, when we look at, the Mexican cartels, you look at Brazil and Colombia, we look all over the world, right? Why are these people killing people? Why do terrorists kill people? It has to do with nurture more than nature. The circumstances of their environment. Sure, some people are kind of naturally aggressive, but the determinant is clearly nurture. And who is in charge of America, for example, on a secular level, on a worldly level? It's whites, Jews, and LGBT people. They're the ones who are leading the black community for all intents and purposes. And in some cases, directly. And certainly, sure in hell, obviously, indirectly. Point number 8. Let's look at street gangs, right? The vice lords, the Satan's disciples. Is not the word Satan a Western word? It's an English word. The Denver Lanes, aka the Devil Lanes, is one gang member who's a blood from Los Angeles area. I believe it's in, actually Pasadena, which is by Los Angeles. He said he worships the devil, and lots of gang members do. Now, in what way do they worship the devil? You see demons. I've seen Hispanic gang members named demons, black gang members named demon. So in what way? They worship the devil in a way that is best described as a Western occult way, not an African way, not an island way so much, except for where it has to do with the churches, right? Santeria, for example, is said to merge kind of voodoo with Catholic rituals because the Western church oversees their form of Satanism. So who's running them in the first place? These are the foot soldiers for white, Jew, and LGBT people, and they're killing each other because the racist elite wants these people to kill each other. And that's the truth in a nutshell. And I know firsthand, not just from my research, I grew up with a lot of these people. I know for sure that that's how it works. It is a criminal underworld society where people don't have the heart to serve God, so they just follow the devil and try to act bad or something. So when we look at, the hairstyles of some of these Hispanic gang members, right? It's like the character from Mortal Kombat, Goro. And where was Goro from? Goro was from the Outworld, which was basically hell. So the hairstyle was a satanic hairstyle, and it is in popular culture, which influences these people. And it has to do with people who worship the devil, who are channeling demons, whether the individual members see it that way or not, because they're often kept in the dark. So you have groups like the Hells Angels, right? Why is it called that? The Aryan Brotherhood, right, with the 666 tattoo, among other things. You have MS-13, right, with their devil horns and their devil horn hand signs, what have you. Okay. And of course you have the Mexican Mafia with the black hand, you have the BGF with the dragon symbolism. Now I'm not going to get into their business too much, just what everyone knows to help you connect the dots to see it's a criminal underworld society. There's no reason to kind of piss them off by getting into their business here. But I just show you, what you need to see here. Point number 9. The code of silence. Why is there a blue code of silence? Point number 10. The Rampart Division and the implications of the Rampart Division. What happened with the Rampart Division exactly? Why were they doing all these crimes with relative impunity? Is the government causing people to commit crimes and giving people a green light to commit certain crimes? Does that influence the crime rate? And is it very convenient to get their black gang members to commit these crimes so they can say, hey, black people are the problem, instead of taking responsibility like a man? Why were there, why this sheriff gang that's around still at a match called the Banditos? So it was in the news maybe last year or something. This sheriff gang right here in California. Point number 11, COINTELPRO. Point number 12, MK Ultra's cult Ram Scramble, which goes back to the Rampart Division and the Baphomet, the goat that so many Satanists worship. And the deity of war in Rome was Mars, whose name is Ram Scramble, which goes back to Aries. And it also goes back to the zodiac, right? And the goat / ram symbol of Aries. Only an idiot would think that's a coincidence. Only a complete idiot. Point number 13. You have the Satanic Temple. Back in the day, the Church of Satan, Anton LaVey, Michael Aquino, the Temple of Set, the Shrek, all these different satanic people. I'm not talking about Shrek the cartoon, but the Satanists. And there's countless groups like this these days, mind you. A lot of them are very much immersed in crime, probably all of them. Point number 14. The most powerful secret society in the world, in popular culture, that I've come across in my research, that people admit, that the facts show it. Because I don't know how much power Bilderberg has, Bohemian Grove, Tirado Commission, but the Club of Rome, according to the experts, in terms of the facts that people agree on, is said to be the most powerful secret society. And that goes back to Mars, and the Rams, and the MK Ultra, and the Zodiac, and Aries, his Greek equivalent. Okay, the Baphomet, what have you. The Club of Rome. The Romans crucified Jesus with the Jews and a lot of Romans were LGBT people. So you have white, Jews, and LGBT people. Point number 15. Porn cults, drugs, human trafficking, and the spectrum of human trafficking. Child trafficking, what have you. A lot of these people who are porn stars are in cults. Look at the symbolism. And I've watched my share of porn when I was younger, when I was confused about, who I am and what to do in life. I'm shunned by women, what have you. So I consider that part of my research. I've seen Satanists in the porn industry doing things that are unbelievably sick. When you look at the porn industry, you have no doubt in your mind that there are satanic cults everywhere, and they are sick fucks with disgusting sexual habits, horrible people, horrible, sickening orgy scum, just horrible people. Point number 16, the Epstein list. Okay. There's a lot of conspiracy theory related to that, so I'm not going to get in that. This is about the factual evidence. But the facts we have there, blow most people's minds. And they've shut up in recent years about conspiracy theorists because they're looking real stupid when they were acting like Hollywood cults weren't on the rampage, when they're acting like there wasn't a connection with the elite and the churches and the royals. What about Prince Andrew and the Epstein list? And on and on and on. Now they look real stupid. Real stupid. Point number 17. Organized crime is like cults, right? They burn in the mafia and popular culture, they burn a picture of a saint as part of their ritual. The Chinese mafia has a faction, or their foot soldiers. It's kind of hard to explain their structure. There's people who speak on that, called the ghost shadows, and they do a ritual where they prick the finger and they drink blood mixed with wine. And one member named China Mac, who's also a rapper, said that he drank chicken blood and snake blood as part of the ritual. And these things have satanic symbolism, right? Drunk out the blood of the saints, right? Revelation 17, right? The cup filled with the wrath of God, the blood of the saints, what have you. And of course, you have all kinds of mafias. One of the biggest mistakes people make when they don't know much about the mafia is they think there's just an Italian mafia. There's an Armenian mafia. There's an Albanian mafia. There's an Irish mafia. There is a Russian mafia. Okay, there's a Jewish mafia. There's a Japanese mafia, the Yakuza. There's the triads, and on and on and on. There's all kinds of mafias I don't even know. And I've done a bit of research into these things. And I've done a lot of research into a lot of things. Point number 18. There are thousands of people who have reported that gang stalking occurs. Okay, and I have 23 witnesses to the government targeting myself. 23 witnesses on record, mind you. There are thousands of people who have witnessed these things, and lots of them have made videos on YouTube about them. And if you add the people who were the victims of the Havana syndrome, we see by the government's response that it's not just kind of indicative of a government cover-up. It screams it. First they said, yeah, these things are happening, we take it seriously. And then they say, well, maybe they're all crazy. Then they say, no, they're probably happening, because what are the odds that all these people, and they have medical, things, medical evidence as well. They even passed a bill that gave them funding, if I remember correctly. Okay, that all these people, it's just in their head, that it's just stress. So they basically proved definitively that there was something going on. Then they turned around and they kind of covered up again. Well, and they started, well, maybe it's Russia. So they kind of went back and forth, right? I remember at one point they were even saying it was crickets that caused something like this, right? Boy, did the government play itself out, just like when they tried to, downplay the more obviously true conspiracy. The obvious conspiracy theory was right. And some of his disinformation, they're notorious for misinformation, but some of them have proven to be true. I think it was someone in the government who was saying that conspiracy theorists, are like 100% or so right now. He threw out a number. Okay. He said these things keep coming out to be true, like the Amero and the Euro and the European Union. They called a lot of stuff here. But again, I deal in the facts, because I don't want anyone to have any excuse for not understanding that I'm right about this. Point number 20 is the MAGA cult. Why has MAGA been described as a cult? If you're going to say, hey, this guy thinks that there's corporate groups and social clubs and cults collaborating together to social engineer, right? Social clubs, social engineering, socializing, fraternities and fraternizing. Okay, then why are so many people referring to MAGA as a cult. Because it's logical to describe what's going on as cult activities that are affecting social life and they affect crime rates. Why doesn't the government hire more police officers? Why don't they send the National Guard to Chicago and keep them there? 500 homicides a year isn't enough? 600? So obviously, the problem isn't just black genetics. That's hardly the problem. Black people are known as the most spiritual people, the soul brothers, the civil rights activists. We have no reason to believe that black urban crime is a result of their genetics. There is no evidence to that effect. There's none. Okay, the closest thing to it is some black people are naturally greater warriors than others, so they're naturally kind of more, hyper masculine, what have you. So what? That doesn't translate right into crime any more than, someone owning a gun would make them a serial killer or something automatically. Point number 21. So we had the Keith Rainier cults, right? Allison Mack. We have people like Weinstein and Cosby and part of some kind of networks, right? And they drastically influenced people and they operated with a certain impunity. And it wasn't until some rich person's daughter was being treated a certain way and she made a big fuss about it that Keith Rainer's cult was exposed. If it wasn't for that, it wouldn't have been exposed. And Allison Mack was a Hollywood actress from Smallville, the TV series. All right, point number 22, there's internet kill cults and kill groups out there. Point number 23, there's witch cults, not just Wicca, etc. There's tons of witch cults everywhere. Witches, covens, look it up. Point number 24, there's the black Hebrew Israelites, right? Well, who are they based on? Are they black Africanites, so to speak? Or are they black Hebrew Israelites influenced by white Jew and LGBT people? And they're almost certainly a CIA front, right? A CIA group, rather, that is out there to play out black people. Point number 25. There's so many claims of satanic ritual abuse. Now, because of the controversy around it and all the claims that it's not true, I'm not going to really put too much time into this. But let's just say there's an overwhelming amount of evidence in terms of the numbers of victims that there must be truth to it. We know that there's Satanists out there, and we know they commit crimes. We know that the government is, hires Satanists all the time, just like there's Klansmen in law enforcement. There's Satanists in law enforcement. And so when they're saying, hey, these Satanists in law enforcement, and they're politicians, and they're abusing them, and it's very similar to Epstein and Klan activities and satanic gangs and satanic biker gangs, so on and so forth, it's stupid to assume that they're wrong. You say, well, they must be wrong about that. It's stupid. Okay. Now, are they all right? Well, some people are crazy. Maybe 10% are crazy. Okay. But a lot of them are telling the truth. So there's Satanists everywhere who deal in psychology and mess with people's head, and they do something similar to trauma-based mind control, whether you want to consider it that or not. And that's part of how you turn out a female. That's why they call, turning out a hooker, right? Hooker, right? Hook ear, right? A whore, right? The trick. She's tricked, right? She's tricked using what? Psychology. And there's these massive groups running psyops on people, and there's massive satanic cults using psychology to control human behavior. Okay, you starting to understand why I'm right and you're wrong yet? Point number 26. There's church sexual abuse. Why on earth haven't they solved that problem yet? How hard could it be to solve? You just tell them to stop, don't allow them to be alone with little kids, okay? If kids are getting raped all the time, because there are cults and corporate groups and social clubs that want that to occur for various reasons. One of them is it increases the number of LGBT people in society. Another one is that it throws off the population and creates division and conflict and confusion. Okay, because when you get sexually abused, you often get confused, right? Rhyme and reason. And there's people who believe in embracing the disgrace, right? Rhyme and reason. Embracing the disgrace for the race. Okay. 27. There's Jewish mysticism. It goes beyond Hollywood. Kabbalistic magic. On and on and on. The Zohar. Point number 28. There's chaos magic and shadow psychology. Very much cult stuff. Point 29. There's neo-Nazi people into the occult like Hitler was. Look it up. Point number 30. There was Branch Davidians historically. Heaven's Gates. Jonestown. That cult in Japan who with the sarin gas or whatever it was. And on and on and on. Point number 31. When we're talking about Freemasons, and again, this is a very controversial topic. I'm dealing in facts only. It's a fact that Francis Galton was a Freemason. He coined the term eugenics. It's a fact that Nathan Bedford Forrest was initiated as a Freemason. As much as any historical thing could be a fact of that nature, that's a fact. It's documented. Point number 32. And not to mention all these corrupt politicians who are Freemasons. Okay, and do they manipulate society? Yes. Is Freemasonry basically a cult? Yes. Look at all the rituals. You do all these rituals, you meet up all the time, the exact nature of it, they've exposed the initiation. It's clearly a cult. Point number 32. There was a report some years back, maybe 4, 5, 6 years ago, I don't know, maybe it was Donald Trump's first term, where they said that there's a secret society in the FBI and it caused quite a scare. Right? And the word FBI is fib scrambled. Point number 33. There's college secret societies, obviously. And they're, what are the odds that Bush ran against Kerry and they both were in the same college secret society? You don't think that's suspicious? Okay, it's not. It's a fact that indicates a deeper conspiracy. It doesn't necessarily prove anything else. I'll leave that to you to understand. All right, point number 34. There's frats and sororities. They're basically cults. That's a whole bag of worms for another day. If you do as much research into it as I have, and you look at the history of it and how they used to, they were there to control social behavior inside college and out, right? To kind of keep people from being successful past a certain point, to control networking. It's a whole bag of worms, right? They're historically racist. These are basically clan-like cults. In fact, one of the facts that in recent years they've made it more controversial is that the leader of the second clan, William Joseph Simmons, he's somebody who obviously collaborated with many people in many fraternities. And they said he was in 24 fraternities. It doesn't matter because there was 4 to 6 million members of the second clan, and lots of them were other fraternities. So they were part of his network, no matter how you slice it. Many of these fraternities knew that, if not all of them, knew that they had members in the clan, and they weren't like, hey, that's not compatible. Instead, they're like, hey, great. Okay, because they are like cults. Point number 35. There's a lot of disinformation in regards to UFOs and stuff like this, and a lot of those people are crazy. But in recent years, it's come out that there's quite a few UFOs out there, and Donald Trump was supposed to expose. I don't know if he did, but there's also discredit and disinformation campaigns when it comes to rape. So that's 35 points that are factual evidence points about how corporate groups, social clubs, and cults influence human behavior to the extreme. And so when we see that they historically hate black people the most, and the Egyptians, most people would agree that Egypt was founded by black people, and that, there's a lot of white people are jealous. They depicted Egyptians as white and so on and so forth, and there was white people depicted in the Egyptian art, and then you have these black Egyptians, right, and some have an afro, some have more like curly kind of Jerry curl looking hair or something, so they're like mixed with various races, right, as you would expect because of the location, right? There's kind of a transition from black Cushites, right, into in the Middle East, okay, where there was people who are like lighter brown, and there's people who, there's black people there too. There's people who were more like Libyans, Berbers, what have you, with white skin who were depicted on there. So we know that they were black, right? They were mixed with black African. I'm black and I'm mulatto. So as we look at the facts here, it's open and shut. There is no other way it could be. The determinant, when we're talking about the root cause for black behavior, is similar to the determinant when we're talking about rock and roll. If people who like rock and roll didn't know rock and roll existed, would they be rock and roll people? No. If the economy was so fucked up, would they be poor rock and roll people who do sex, drugs, and rock and roll and don't care about themselves to a large degree? No. The cultures came from the governing class, and there's all these corporate groups and social clubs that market it to them, that sell them on the idea. And there's cults. The word for culture is cult. And they come from the governing class. And you have cancel culture because they cancel the cultures they don't want around. So why did they cancel gang culture and violent crime culture? Because they wanted it around, and they're the ones who put it there. If you look at the history of the Crips and the Bloods and these other gangs, these Chicago gangs, okay, it's very much rooted in Freemasonry and social clubs and things of that nature, okay, and cults. And I use the example of that guy from the Denver Lanes Blood gang in Pasadena, which is by Los Angeles in California, where he calls it the Devil Lanes because so many people in the gang community worship the devil. And that's part of how gangs came about. Right, In fact, Tookie Williams, who's one of the founders of the Crips, along with Batman, Raymond Washington, what have you, he was somebody who worked at a boys club. Okay, not a coincidence. Thank you.